Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is The Raptor, and on this channel, we love a good tradition. After many years of creating dream seasons for Death Battle alongside my Discord server, it's once again time to gather a completely new batch of ideas for the new year, or newish. This video took a while to do. Even with seasons not really being a thing in Death Battle anymore, we'll be sticking with the usual number of 16 episodes for this. But honestly, you guys suggested so many fun and creative battles that easily could have made up tons of seasons in total. So thank you to everyone so much for that, and if anyone watching hasn't joined the server but would like to partake in events like this, you can find that link and many others in the description. The selection process was incredibly difficult, especially when removing my own matchup bias in the grand scheme of things, but a lot of these decisions come down to semi-realism and also cohesiveness as a group of actual episodes Death Battle could make. Obviously, we can't have too many of the same kinds of characters, media formats, genres, or animation styles crammed into one season, and the frequency of all that stuff will try to be somewhat in line with Death Battle's usual or average tendencies. But that doesn't mean we're not getting creative. I think we've got some decently out there picks and that there will be something in here for everyone. Other than that, I hope you all enjoy, and let's get started. Starting off with our premiere, Lose Noceda versus Boonchuy, arguably the most popular modern cartoon matchup currently, and one that's been so highly anticipated for what feels like a little too long now. It's such a perfect episode to kick off the season, build up the hype, and likely attract a new wave of fans who've dreamt of some kind of Owl House and Amphibia crossover. It's a very character-driven idea that still has quite a bit of content from their series to cover, both of which allow for strong writing across all segments of the video. That, in my mind, is the best way to get the ball rolling and set the tone for everything that follows. This is really about as well-rounded as it gets. For episode 2, Mr. Fantastic versus Mr. Terrific, a relatively new kid on the block for comic book matchups as far as peak popularity. While Death Battle does do a better job with franchise variety these days, Marvel and DC are never going anywhere, and these super intelligent engineers and space explorers concept manages to be easy, relevant, and most importantly, actually good. Representing the current big changes of the superhero movie landscape, it would bring in both the casual and hardcore fans, as well as give us a more than appropriate introduction to Fantastic Four on the show. So it's a smart inclusion, no pun intended, but it also has the ability to massively succeed as its own product, like any good idea. For episode 3, Wing Gundam Zero versus Evangelion Unit 01, pitting two of the most recognizable mecha anime against each other and giving them some more much-deserved spotlight on the show. These kinds of episodes have to dive into both the man and the machine. I think it's cool whenever each analysis has very distinct parts to cover, and it's super easy for the combat to be hard-hitting and enticing while staying equally true to the way each of them fight. From a bigger point of view as well, this matchup gives a little bit of variety to the scale of the combatants, because we're not going to see anything else that looks quite like this in this season. To paraphrase Boomstick, nothing's cooler than giant fighting robots. For episode 4, Omori versus Room. As a lot of the members know, this was the most individually suggested matchup for this event, so kinda difficult to ignore. I envision this animation as mostly hand-drawn, but also having some incorporation of one or two other styles to properly rig or portray certain shots, not to mention tons of unique analysis, writing, and editing. The episode may not reel in as many new viewers, relatively speaking, but first and foremost, this one's meant to be the people pleaser for the really hardcore Death Battle fans, and also indie fans to some degree at least. Plus, you can't have a season without some daring, more experimental stuff peppered in. I'm sure no one's gonna disagree on that front. For episode 5, Jin Sakai versus Connor Kenway, Shinobi versus Assassin, the Ghost versus the Wolf. After many episodes in a row with crazy abilities or technology, this one takes a refreshing step back and emphasizes pure skill and devotion to the craft. And also some enhanced capabilities because it is video games. It's an opportunity to flex with the choreography and to show just how well Death Battle understands the additional lore, and it's nice sometimes to have a battle built on pure badassery that fully plays it straight. It's got all the proper ingredients to thrive in this formula, and it adds some more variety to the tone of the season, which is always good for keeping things fresh and exciting. For episode 6, Homelander versus Nemesis, there has been a decent amount of talk regarding what's the best way to bring back Homelander, but while this is absolutely not the be-all end-all, it does appear to be one of his most workable and engaging options, because these characters manage to be two of the most foul comic book villains without even being from the two major companies, and this is a good way to introduce another still pretty well-known publisher. Not to mention likely having some actual debate prospects, although that kinda could all get thrown out the window depending on if or how DCKO boss battle affects canon Homelander, but I'm not about to focus on that right now. For episode 7, Captain Jean-Luc Picard versus Grand Admiral Thrawn, a massive scale army fight like we have never seen before on this show. Alongside the tactical comparison, this idea is an easy avenue to just debate which franchise has better technology overall, which I certainly have no problem with, and I think it makes a lot of sense to incorporate as many animation styles as possible when showing exterior shots in space, shots within the spaceships, the communication screens. All of that deserves to look unique. From the storytelling to the firepower and ideological analyses, this matchup represents the true essence of the Star Trek and Star Wars rivalry more than any other. For our mid-season finale, episode 8, Son Goku vs. Sonic the Hedgehog, an iconic and infamous, wink wink, idea in the broader versus space, loved by some and complained over by everyone. With these being two of the most used series in Death Battle history, and the characters who keep continuously fighting the same opponents, this double run back allows them to shine in a different context that could still be an epic clash. No matter your opinions on the matchup, this episode is meant to be the attention grabber. It's the one where everyone and their mother knows the fighters, and whether people are in or out of the versus community, it's gonna draw out all the engagement possible before moving into the second half. For episode 9, Korra vs. Delsin Rowe, I hope you all liked my very subtle foreshadowing for this matchup in the previous segment. Right after a battle between two of the greatest heroes ever known, this episode explores what it means to carry on the heroism, but also how they grow into their own characters. The theme is very different from Korra's last appearance on the show, and it's a bit of a people pleaser in that this is the idea a good majority of viewers wanted for her in the first place. There's a decently cool combination of abilities present here, pretty interesting series combination too, and as long as the choreography and writing work together to make it a believable interaction, I think it's a good pick. For episode 10, Tengen Uzui vs. Aoi Todo, we may have seen both of these series before, but it wasn't quite like this. Simply put, this idea is meant to be as over the top and in your face as possible. It doesn't need an essay's worth of connections for the personality to speak for itself compared to all the other matchups. And the best part is, there's room to showcase these guys' other major traits too, like their dedication and proficiency when it comes to combat. This is a death battle after all. It's a balancing act that may lean a bit more on the laid-back side of things, but that makes it fun, and their franchises ensure it could still be a beautiful fight animation and a genuinely interesting character study. For episode 11, Nightcrawler vs. Nico D'Angelo, an underworldly concept with ironically a lot of heart behind it. It might be a bit of an out there matchup, but really shows just how similar two characters from very distinct worlds can still be. A lot of their respective skill sets and themes match up pretty well for a death battle production. Plus, with Nightcrawler's insane immortality presumably having been retconned as of late, it's an easier sell to bring him onto the show now. I mean, as long as it's not Nightcrawler versus number 5. Point is, it's an intriguing idea with surprisingly relevant characters right now, and it has the potential to hit incredibly hard on an emotional level, even if you're not the most attached to X-Men or Percy Jackson. For episode 12, Thrall vs. Ghazghul Thraka, Orc Shaman War Chief versus Cyborg Warlord. You could absolutely call this the wild card episode, the one that would probably come out of nowhere for a lot of people, but nonetheless a fitting matchup that gives us our fill of high fantasy and everything else that makes up Warhammer 40,000. And that series introduction in and of itself makes for a production unlike any we've ever seen here. It really is just as much teaching the audience how the games work as it is dissecting all the lore. The comparison itself feels so right, yet there's more than enough distinct elements to each of them that we definitely be in for a fight of unique power clashing and epic proportions. For episode 13, Slenderman vs. Sadako Yamamura, we haven't skipped Halloween in these dreams dream seasons, and we sure as hell aren't gonna start now. Here we move into a Champions Island rep that definitely garnered some support in the event, and this idea pairs him with his relatively new opponent going around instead of any of his historically major matchups. It gives two of the most well-known icons from creepypastas and horror films respectively a chance to shine, because Death Battle's been sorely lacking in those departments overall. And of course we go back to an actual scary Halloween tone like Jason vs. Michael, but even deeper into that fear of the unknown concept, which can absolutely be frustrating, but also really interesting. For episode 14, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles vs. Lego Ninjago, the new long-awaited sequel to the critically acclaimed TMNT Battle Royale. A bit more on the lighthearted side after the last episode, but still with some emotional baggage to unpack, and it leverages the idea that every single one of these guys is at their best in these teams. Working together is their true maximum potential. This is the episode where the choreography takes center stage, utilizing everyone's weapons and powers in cool ways, in addition to their raw ninja skills. Also, like Omori vs. Room, this idea, or some variation of it, was suggested a number of times in the Discord, and it's nice to get a team battle in there considering how rare it can be on the show. For our penultimate episode, Funny Valentine vs. Senator Armstrong, we got a couple more villains up in here before we wrap things up, and also a little more humor to go with it. With the JoJo's Part 7 anime finally starting this year, it gets put way back into the public consciousness, and it allows this staple of JoJo's and Metal Gear matchups to get the wider attention it needs to really take off. The writing and the animation can equally play up the hilariosity of the comparison, the memes, and the nationalism that can be kind of scary to think about. This may not put it close to some election or anything, but I wouldn't say placing it in these times is totally inappropriate either. I'm very happy to be Canadian. And last but not least, for the finale, Hatsune Miku vs. Barbie, bringing in one more Champions Island rep that some people probably felt got taken out too soon, and pairing her with her biggest opponent in this day and age by far. Low-key, I think this matchup could totally be finale-worthy, mostly based on the impact and instant recognizability of not just the characters, but them as brands as well. It's an episode that the average non-versus person wouldn't expect could go nuts and look beautiful as an animation, and there is so much to cover in the analyses, the last thing it's gonna be is boring. When Death Battle lives up to such high potential, we all get something insanely amazing and amazingly insane, and that potential is here. So guys, that closes out the dream season for the year. Once again, thanks to everyone who submitted. You did not make the job easy. If you want to see previous dream seasons or join the Discord server itself, all of that will be linked in the description. Otherwise, give this video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and become a channel member for more support and perks. That's it for me, so thanks for watching, and have a great day. Peace out.